Okay, a bit about our speaker tonight. Ellis Taylor is a West Australian-born British writer and mystic. In his work, he is an outspoken, acknowledged, and uncompromising consciousness explorer and commentator who combines his studies and observations with insights and knowledge gained through his much authenticated intrinsic lifetimes, interactions with other worlds and the others. Sentence. Ellis is a lover of nature and a proponent of feminine wisdom. A seventh-generation Australian, he was born in Bridgetown on the banks of the Blackwood River in the southwest of Australia. His ancestral origins are Cornish, Welsh, Scottish, and Irish, so a real Celt. He's an author of 3 printed books: Living in the Matrix, In These Signs Conquer, and Dogged Days, and the author of an e-book, The Esoteric Alphabet. Besides his otherworldly lessons, Ellis has studied tarot, hypnosis, and numerology. Since 1996, he has been developing what he calls numerosymbology, a new and potent analytical technique that combines numerology, symbology, etymology, and phonetics. Ellis now works mainly as a writer of articles coloured and informed by his own experiential perceptions, and often peppered with arcane and numero-symbological wisdom. Ellis has presented lectures in Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Australia and England, and has been interviewed on several TV and radio stations across the world, as well as for newspapers and magazines. So, without further ado, can you put your hands together, please, for Ellis Taylor.
Is it still working? Yeah. Thanks everyone for turning up. It's a pleasure to be here. And my first talk is about my experiences, really. And I've changed it a little bit from the advertised talk, but we'll still get into some of that. So, I'd not met Emmeline before coming here, but I think I've met his brother. That was in Laughlin, Nevada when I went there, and that's Anne Andrews. I don't know if anybody knows Anne Andrews? Yeah? In fact, you know, get her here to talk if you can. She's got a very interesting story. And of course Robbie Williams, and he was there. And probably, when we were there, he was probably better than I've ever seen him, to be honest, and had a good chat with him, etc. But anyway, I'll talk about Laughlin later, so if we can go on to the next one. Right, my early memories. I'll start off by telling you, you've heard a little bit about my background as well, but other things that are interesting to researchers is when people have experiences, certain factors and aspects come up, and one of them is what your blood group is. Well, I'm just bog standard ORH positive. But I've known all my life because I was told that no one can have my blood. And I went and gave blood one day, and the next thing I went down with jaundice, and I had to throw it away. So I'm not allowed to give anybody any blood. Yeah, as I was saying before, as Emily was saying earlier, I come from the ancient British lines of the people here, and on my mother's side they were lairds in Scotland, and they also came from Ireland and Cornwall. My dad's side came from Scotland and Wales. Anyway, we go on to the early memories. So in about 1960, I was a kid and we were playing in the fields with all my mates, and just standing there, well, just playing around and everything. All of a sudden, noticed my mate was just standing there looking, and we looked round, and a helicopter had appeared. There was no noise, but there was a helicopter there. And it was only 50 yards away, really. And we all stopped and looked at it, and these two guys got out. They were dressed in sort of, well, do you want to show the picture of Sean? Yeah. Dressed in that sort of outfit, and US on the side of the helicopter. But what got me is when they walked out of the helicopter, there was none of this crouching down and hair blowing and God knows what else. They walked straight out. Yeah. They particularly talked to me and a friend of mine. And I said, do you want to go for a ride?
That's the last thing
We
you can remember.
After that, shall I just speak loudly or something? Can you hear me if I talk like this? After that, we never discussed it, we never talked to each other about it, nothing. Now, that's odd as well, isn't it? Because you'd tell everybody, wouldn't you? You'd be so excited. But we never discussed it. And every now and again, I'd think about this thing, but only when I was on my own, never with anybody. So I never got to actually ask anybody about it when I thought about it. And then, a lot of years later, I moved into a village. Must have been about 30 years. Moved into a village, and as I drove through the village, I noticed this guy go into this shop, and he was my mate. He was that one, going into the shop. So I hauled on the anchors and waited for him to come out. He came out, and he was living in the village as well. And I hadn't seen him since I was about 20. And anyway, we arranged to go to the pub. We went to the pub, standing there on a drink, and I remembered this thing. I said, do you remember that incident when we were kids playing in the field and there was a helicopter there? He kind of looked at me, and he looked sort of a bit odd. It was like something was clicking on. I don't know how to explain it. But he said, yeah, I do. I said, I haven't thought about that since I was a kid. I said, do you remember what happened? Couldn't remember anything about it. Nothing. And then a few years later, I went with another mate to another pub, and the landlord of this pub just happened to be another one of these kids who was there. And I said to him, hey Nick, do you remember when we were kids and there was a helicopter under there? Oh yeah. I said, what happened? He said, I don't know, probably ran away, didn't we? And that was like really weird, isn't it? You'd remember everything about it, wouldn't you? You'd just tell everybody and it'd be the most exciting thing, but nobody remembered. And I was thinking about when, before this happened, this incident, some American servicemen came to our school and taught us how to play softball. And they made a real fuss of us. They were from Upper Ayford. They made a real fuss of us. And I can remember sitting on this guy's knee and he was like putting his hat on me and all this sort of stuff. It was really exciting. And then I recalled that these guys had American accents. And they'd actually said the word howdy. Because when we were kids then, cowboys and Indians was the rage. So this way of talking, we would have recognised, probably made us feel a bit more at ease or something. I did get regressed about this by Mary Rodwell, if anybody knows her. And what came out was that wasn't a helicopter. It was a craft, an AT craft or whatever. But I've never been absolutely sure that that's right either. Because I've got a feeling it's a screen memory. And as I get older, more and more I think it's a screen memory. And I think that this was a military abduction. So, but I'm not sure. That's where I'm thinking at the moment. But it was very, very odd. Do you want to go to this? Okay, my earliest recollection, I'm about 2, I'm in Australia. All of a sudden, I'm in bed, all of a sudden the light goes, the room's lit up like the curtains are waving. I look out the curtains as it starts, figure standing there. And I'm just looking at it. And I don't know who it is, what's going on, I'm really confused. And I could remember this, and it was something that popped into my head all my life as well. Then Mary regressed me about this as well. But it didn't really fill in any details more than I remember. Except then I started recollecting that this sort of thing that's happened has happened throughout my life, not just when I was a kid. Do you want the next one? Because after this, I was taken on board by these people dressed like that. And not just me, other kids as well. And not just kids. If you go to the next one. I was sitting there and I saw this old man being pulled through. He was fast asleep and they just dragged him through. Who these people were or whatever they were, no idea. They didn't take their hoodie things off, whatever they are. Okay, has anybody heard about this incident at the Probe International Conference? Right, okay. The organisers sent out this message. I was speaking at this conference, and the organisers sent out this message saying there was a new speaker. His CV was so long that she couldn't write it. But basically, he was a former intelligence officer. He was a former Olympian. He was a bodyguard for Robert Kennedy, loads of different things. And that he was going to be this extra speaker. So nobody knew who he was, nobody had ever seen him or anything. So at the talk, I give my talk, and some of what I'm showing on here, I showed at that talk. Forgotten something actually. When I first got there, I went into the tea room, got a cup of tea. There was no one else in there, and the room is kind of, I don't know, from here to the, not quite as far as the bar. I'm right at that end, making a cup of tea. Nobody else is in there. I make the tea. All I've got to do is stir it. I put the spoon in the cup. The door opens. I look round. 2 guys walk in. I go like that, put that there. Suddenly those blokes are there in that time. And it freaks me out. It's giving me goosebumps now. And I just sort of looked at them and kind of walked and went out. Anyway, later on, I'd given my talk, and then there was going to be these 2 guys from before are going to be giving a talk, and I didn't want to go into that. So I missed that one, but got in at the end, and my mate said to me, "Oh, you should have seen that. They showed a flying saucer, and they showed how it worked, and it lifted off and everything. It was fantastic." I said, "Where do they do that?" And he said, "Just there on that table." Okay. Anyway, there was a break again, we all went out, came back in, and I just missed the beginning of Dean's talk. He was talking about 9/11 and how that happened. But I missed what he was saying about that. But we sat down. Dean was pretty animated. He was walking around, doing this, that and the other. And he said, "Oh, and then I was going to do blah, blah, blah. Oh, I was going to talk about Robert Kennedy." Bang, he dropped dead in front of the audience. Now, I saw the spirit go out of him, but everybody just sat there. They did. Part of the blurb for the talk was that he was going to do something surprising. So whether people sat there and thought it was an act or what, I don't know, but nobody moved. And then all of a sudden, everybody ran to help him. But I'd seen the spirit go out of him, so I didn't walk. But a guy who used to be in the secret military then, who some of you know, but I won't say his name, was sitting at the back wall looking out on the audience, and he said straight away, that was a hit. You can buy this, I think he said it was 10 grand, there's this machine you can get that can cause a heart attack. Anyway, that was a very surprising incident. But what had happened before that was during the lunch break, my friend who I'd gone up there with, who is ex-para and a few other things, including naughty things, he was in the tea room with loads of other people. And I was in there at the beginning, and this guy had approached me after my talk, and he said to me, Ellis, he said, I've got to talk to you. He said, brilliant presentation, I love it, but there's something there I've got to talk to you about. And I said, well, what? And then this other guy came up, he said, I'll tell you for now. That turned out to be Dean Warwick. Now, I left then, but everybody else was in this room. And Dean, who I now know to be Dean, said to my friend, I know you. I said, no, you don't. He said, I never forget a face. He said, yeah, I know you. He said, I remember where soon. And then he came back at him and he said, you were working in the islands in Scotland. I said, no, I've never been to Scotland. It was secret stuff, see. He couldn't say he'd been to Scotland. He said, you worked on Blue Streak. Have you heard of Blue Streak? It was like an end-of-the-world weapon, and they buried it in Woomera in the end. But anyway, when Dean mentioned Blue Streak, one of these guys who'd come into the room earlier and just appeared in no time next to me, launched at him with the most vicious assault and said, when the Lord Marduk returns, you will be one of the first. That's what he said, with real viciousness. And everybody was like, whoa, what's going on here? And then they carried on talking, and then Dean said something about, oh, I've got to move away from the window because I'm expecting a red dot on my forehead any minute, because I've been told I will not get away from here alive. And my mate and everyone else thinking, oh yeah, but it turned out that he didn't get out of there alive. Anyway, you can read about that on the internet. There's people written about it, including me on the internet. So. But yeah, dangerous game. Do you want to turn to the next one? We've gone backwards. So, what do I think that Dean wanted to talk to me about? Well, it could have been this. Because this photograph, a very famous photograph, was taken in Solway Firth, which is where some of the work on Blue Streak was done. And Woomera wanted to know how come they had a photograph of this guy behind him when people like that had been walking backwards and forwards over the landing strip. And it looks very similar to those, whatever they were, that were taking me. So that's my guess as to what he was talking about. So, beginning 13th of April, no, a little bit before 13th of April, March, I had 47 days and nights of constant stuff. And this is some of it. The next one. Okay, March 1996. So this began with me just all of a sudden had this feeling, you ought to report that UFO that you saw it, not Farnborough, I forgot the name, down near Lechlade somewhere. A friend and I saw this UFO. I don't know why, it's loads, but that's what came in my head. I had to report it. I thought, oh, okay. So I'm looking through the telephone book to see if there's a UFO group, and I find one, so I'll give them a ring then. But I didn't. And then that next morning or something, I think it was, do you want to do the next one? I was in the shower and I noticed my leg had been shaved over a scar. Oh, well, that's a bit weird. I didn't shave my leg. And then my stepdaughter kept waking up really kind of in strange, like screaming and stuff. And we noticed she had red circles on her. And I said to my partner, the first time, she had a red circle on her. She said, well, you had one on this morning as well. Anyway, that's just the beginning of it. So the next thing come 13th of April 1996. I woke up, went to the loo, came back, got into bed. My partner go, chuck the covers off me. What's that all over you? Next. So on me, I had all these strange patterns and designs or whatever. I was being used like a bit of a painting thing or whatever. But what that is, I don't know. Got no idea. It's like some sort of a paw thing or something. I don't know. Do you want the next one? I had this face on my side. The next one. Notice how burnt I am everywhere. It was like radiation burns. And this face, whatever it is, I'm still not really sure what it is on my side. And these finger marks on my arm. This is my partner talking about it. Do you want to hear it? Have you got time, Johnny? Just quickly. So, so anyway, all these designs and things are all over my body, etc. And this happened like over 47 days, loads of times. And every night things were happening, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I just wanted to point this out. Has anybody seen Taken? It's really good. It's worth watching. It's very accurate. And the thing is that during it, in Taken, this guy wakes up with these finger marks on. Now, I'd had my photographs on my website for a while, so I think their researchers saw them and used the same sort of thing.
Part of our work, we've met a few people who have been abducted with exactly the same things on their arms, like finger marks.
Don't surprise me. Yeah. Well, this was back in 1996, and they went on my website, and their researchers obviously wanting to be accurate, look around, and I think there wasn't hardly anything on the internet then, but the other thing was that I'd also channeled this drawing, and that was their version of it.
Oh.
So I think that just goes, hats off to him for doing such good research for it, because it's a really, really accurate series.
What is the drawing?
I don't know.
You channeled it.
It looks like chakras or sort of energy going up.
It's some sort of energetic thing, it is, yeah, but I don't know. Yeah.
And pyramids, the kind of symbol.
It's kind of like that as well, yeah.
Brian had a UFO sighting last year, a diamond shaped thing over one eye.
Yes.
That reminds me of that. On the left hand side, yeah.
Okay.
That was in two different colours as well, wasn't it?
The top half was deep blue, and it came down, it was like cone shape, and it came down like that, and the bottom part was bright red.
Yeah, the draw you did, it's exactly like that.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's interesting, isn't it? Okay, now a lot of people sort of dismiss this guy, but I don't. And the reason I don't is because those hands that he's showing there are too much like those fingerprints on there. And the next one. Oh, there should be another one. Do you want to go back? Maybe that comes later, sorry about that. Yeah, so anyway, when this happened, my partner was freaked out no end on this 13th of April, the first time it happened. she was kind of inconsolable, and she was scared out of her wits. And for some reason I wasn't, but I wanted to help her, and I didn't know what I could do to help her. So I wanted to find somebody who might know about this sort of stuff to talk to her, who was like a psychologist or something like that. And then I remembered that I'd phoned up this UFO group, and I thought, oh, I wonder if they know anybody. So I phoned him up, and this guy called Brian answered, and I told him what had happened. He said, oh, don't worry, he said, it only ever happens once, it never happens again. He said, it don't happen again, no. He said, I told him that she'd taken these photographs. She'd taken all the photographs of the mother. They lasted for about 10 minutes, quarter of an hour, something like that, after we noticed them, but then they faded. How long they'd been on there before we woke up, I don't know, but that's what happened. And he said, oh, we've got a meeting this Friday. Could you bring the photographs along? I said, yeah. He said, but have you got anybody there who could kind of counsel my partner because she's terrified? Oh, no, we haven't got anybody like that. He said, but you never know who's going to come. There might be, somebody might turn up. And they held it at Murdoch University in Perth, and it was like loads of academics there, but they were academics who were very interested in the paranormal and UFOs and all that kind of stuff. And they were quite a good bunch of people, actually. But I went along there, and I'm talking to, well, I talked to quite a few of them, but in this particular time, I was talking to this guy called Simon Harvey Wilson, who's done quite a lot. He's passed away now, but he did a lot of work on consciousness, spirit, and all that kind of stuff, and he became quite well known. Anyway, I'm talking to him, and he's looking at photographs, etc., and my ear starts itching like anything. And I thought, I've been bitten by a mosquito, which is a regular occurrence in Australia. And it was itching like anything anyway. And off I went home, got back, and I said, look, I'm sorry, love, there wasn't anybody who could help us, but we'll keep looking. And I said, oh, have I been bitten by a mosquito? And I showed her the back of my ear, which is the next one. That's me pulling the lobe there. The next morning is the next one. This is when Mary turned up for the first time. That was what it was like in the morning. And the next one is what it looked like without being pulled out like that. There's a circle around it, a cut down there, and these were like stitches, but they weren't thread, they were like welds. Then I remembered that, like, for a couple of weeks before, and every now and again I'd gone like that, and I could feel something like really tiny in there, like a grain of sand or something. It was a bit weird or something. Now, what had happened was that morning, before I'd gone to the meeting, I felt like I wanted to have a meditate, so I went and lay down in bed. Almost as soon as I lay down, something clamped around my ankles. I could feel someone's hands holding my shoulders down, and out I went. And I could feel this, something whizzing around in my mouth, like a ball whizzing around really fast in my mouth. And the next thing I knew, I came to, and I was like really groggy, like I'd been run over by a truck or something. And I just couldn't come together, Took ages to sort of come round. So I think that's when that cut was done, was during that time then. So, yeah. So this is some of the things that I remember when I was there. I remember in the morning what had happened, and also sometimes during the day as well. I'm just on this craft, and there's these two beings who took absolutely no notice of me. Huge, white, bright place, and they just kind of, didn't take any notice of me. I just wandered around the craft. And next one. And I came across this great big bank of like, clients, like fridges all on top of each other or something, you know, that shiny white. They had these red stick handles, every single one. They were stick handles, red. It says something about the way they hold things, doesn't it? And I remember pulling one out, and there were all these body parts in there. And someone said to me, the body parts were all used in 1939. Got told all sorts of weird stuff. And the next one. That was another craft I was on. Now this craft went up, and when it was high enough, the walls that you couldn't see through became see-through. And you could see everything all around you. And I remember this guy, he wasn't actually sitting on the seat, he was kind of suspended. It was like weird, and we were heading towards this planet, and all these craft were coming towards us. Can you hear me still? Yeah? Good. Now, the times I can remember going up in the craft, sometimes it's like, other times, what I remember is going up, and every time it goes like that, it's like a ring of smoke, it looks like. Obviously not smoke, that's what it looks like.
Outside the cross?
Yeah, all around it. Right, now, this was a bit of a weird one. We were in bed, and I could feel something behind me, but I couldn't move. I was trying to see what there was behind me, but in the mirror, I could see this being. And then I could see other things moving around as well. And then something jumped on the bed, and it was like, wasn't heavy, it was like an apple. Say if you dropped an apple on the bed, the weight of that, hardly any weight at all. I felt it. And I was sort of like that, and then I could feel something hold my elbow like that. And it felt, and I've never felt a dolphin, but at the time I thought to myself, that feels like a dolphin would feel. Like the texture and etc. There was no pressure, but I found myself sitting up. And I'd said to myself before this one, right, I'm not going to be scared. If they take me again, I'm going and I'm going to tell them. Right. Leave me alone. And I was sitting up, then I bottled out and started screaming. Next thing, I'm lying back down, and my partner says, what's up? I said, they've been again. No, they haven't, she said, and went back to sleep. I had all these circles and things all over, and finger marks and all that sort of stuff. In the morning, I said to her, they did come last night, look. And it was still on me something. I said, what are you talking about? I said, well, when I told you last night that they'd been, she said, no, I didn't. And you said, no, they didn't. She said, no, I didn't. I don't remember talking to you at all. I said, well, you did. Anyway, this one, if you just press on the picture, you might see it. But this is how they manifest. I just kind of... Will it show? No.
No, I don't do anything.
No. They just kind of come out of nothing, and it's like snow or something like that. It's just sort of, and they're a being. So they come into this dimension that way. Other times, what you find is like, boom, they're just there. But on this particular occasion, it fizzled into the air. But yeah, they're interdimensional. I'm absolutely convinced they're interdimensional, because that's my experience of them. Do you want to go to the next one? So that was the other thing I wanted to show. No one draws the feet, no one talks about the feet, maybe I do now, I never used to. But that's what they look like. And there's a picture of Boy Bushman showing the feet. Now, I think the guy's genuine. And this is a deathbed interview he did. Okay, next one. That was me in the garden. I just felt to take a picture, so I took a picture, and there's this being looking at me. And you see all the energy's got funny around anyway. Next one. That was something that happened. That looks like a little baby's hand or something, and we didn't have a little baby. It's a tiny little hand. Next one. Yeah, one night I felt really ill and my heart was hurting. And I was thinking that like something's going to happen to me in the night. And so before I went to sleep, I prayed that I'd be healed. And I woke up in the morning feeling great. But I had that on me. Like someone had cut me open and done something to my heart. Next one. More strange fingerprints. Looks like they've pulled me or something. Next one. More strange fingerprints. Next one. More strange fingerprints. Only fingerprints. Now this is getting into the realms of what I'm doing now, and my interactions with the fag. And that's who that's who they are. And they took me up into this light box. That's me up in the air going in. That's like the lights of the houses below. Next one. Yeah, Laughlin. I went to Laughlin to the UFO conference, and next one. I went with Paul and Anne Andrews, and also Mike Oram and Fran, his partner. Does anybody know these people?
I've corresponded with Mike Oram. Hoped to come here, but he's not well. His wife's not well.
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
Put it back to next year.
But lovely people and very interesting people as well. Lots of strange things have happened to them. So we didn't go together, but we met up when we got there. We arranged to meet up when we got there. So, yeah. I had a horrendous time. They gave me a room in this hotel, and this room was so active. The first, I'd only been in there a few minutes, and you went in the front door, and there was like a door there to the bathroom, and I was just in there, just washing my face. Looked around, there's this woman walking around smoking. What's going on? Went out the door, nobody there. And then every single night you could hear, like there was a party going on there, all this talking, noise and clattering glasses. It was just a racket all the time. I never got any sleep. I was knackered from the minute I got there to the minute I left. But other things that happened as well, I was sitting in the audience listening to a speaker, and I was chattering to these two people sitting here. And there's like hundreds of people in this place. And the floor started shaking like that. And these people next to me looked at me, is it an earthquake? Don't know. Anyway, the talk was soon over and out we went. And I said to Paola Harris, do you know Paola? She's a UFO journalist. Anyway, I said, what do you think that was, an earthquake? She said, what? Nobody else had felt this thing except us three sitting here. Next day, another in the audience again, but sitting in a different place, and the people who were sitting next to me were sort of sitting 2 rows in front of me. Full station. And these two people were, oh my God, it's an earthquake. And I sort of shouted over to these two, and I said, can you feel that? I said, no, what? I said, shaking. So whether it was me or what, I don't know, but this was definitely around me anyway. And it was very uncomfortable. But I saw people shape-shifting. I saw a well-known speaker shape-shift. Well, he actually walked in, he was a reptilian, then shape-shifted into a human being. And all these weird things were going on all the time. Paul and Anne had weird things happen, Mike and Fran had weird things happen. Anyway, I'd had enough of that, and Paul, Anne, myself and their two friends, we decided we'd go early, and we went to Area 51. So we went and had a look at Area 51 and all that sort of stuff. Paul and Anne had been there before, and Mike had been there before as well, because he talks about all that. And yeah, there's a jeep up there on the sand dune or whatever it is with military coppers looking at you. So we looked around there, and then we went to Las Vegas, which I hated. Again, all sorts of problems. I left there to go to Sydney, so I had to catch a plane from Vegas to Los Angeles, I think it was, and then off to Sydney. But when I got to the airport at Vegas, standing in this queue for the passport, etc., now there's this huge guy sitting there, like checking people's passports, and he had this screen in front of him, and all sorts of shuffled along. And I got there, gave him my passport. He was like, you know, he couldn't care less about his job, one of those blokes. Gave him my passport. I've got one! I'm thinking, got what? Anyway, these blokes come rushing out in their uniforms and that. They grab me and take me around the back, and search me and everything else. And I said, what's this about? He says, just be patient, sir, or something like that. I can't remember. Anyway, so they did all that and the other, and I got away and just about got my flight, I think. And then I flew to Sydney, got to Sydney, my luggage didn't arrive. And it never arrived for 6 weeks. Next one. Next one. Yeah, next one. Yeah, and in my bag, when I got it, was this nice little note from Homeland Security. And I stupidly, in my confused state from this horrible experience I had there, I'd left my money in my suitcase. And I had Australian money and English money and American money. When I got my suitcase back, the money was all gone except for the Australian money. I think they probably thought it was toy money because at the time it was plastic and all the rest of it, so no one knew. But it wasn't nice. And the other thing is, I was picked up by my daughter and her husband, and this woman whose eyes went zzz in Sydney, and turned out to be, very foretelling. But next one. Missing time. I had tons and tons of missing time in my life, and no idea what's happened in it. But the first time. Actually, go on to the side probably. When we left Australia to come to live in England, I was between 2 and 3. And I went missing on board when we were in the Gulf of Aden. Everybody was looking for me, everybody was panicking, where is he, has he gone overboard, where is he? And then I just turned up in a place where everybody had looked anyway. I don't know what had happened, but that's what happened. And then, do you want to go to this? Yeah, so there's the old Gulf of Aden and everything. So, but before we'd been to Aden, we stopped off in Ceylon, Colombo. Do you want to go next one? That's a picture of me, my sister and my mum in Colombo.
But this bloke freaks me out. So whether he was watching us or not, I don't know. But it looks like I was kind of looking at what was happening as well. That was before I went missing on the boat. Anyway, next one.